We are having a show today that is essentially 20 years ish in the making. Uh, I won't bore everyone with the backstory, but I've known this man since before my daughter was born, and my daughter is now in college. So do the math. It is time has indeed flowed. Tempus fugate, as we say in Latin. Shout out to Mr. Principe, my Latin teacher. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, this is incredibly exciting. I am happy and almost a little confused with my feelings here. I am joined by Nolen J. Lake, who, like I said, I've known since I had a 31-inch waist, and I don't anymore. So a lot of things have changed in the time that I've known this man. We've gone
Absolutely.
through a few different presidential administrations. A whole lot has happened. And let me see. I'm trying to remember how many Power Five conferences. Well, let me see. I can remember when I think when he and I met, Colorado might have been in the Big 12, left the Big 12, and came back to the Big 12 in the time that I've known this man.
Yep.
So, what a long, strange trip it's been. Ladies and gentlemen, all the ships in the sea, America, all across America. They're in for a treat. We're being joined by Nolen J. Lake. How are we doing, sir?
Man, I have been waiting for this all day. I've gotten in about 4 times, made sure my settings were working,
Yeah, I
ready to
checked
go.
out early, and then I thought it's like that can't be Nolan already. So yeah, I guess I didn't add you to the stream because no stream yet. But yeah, so you are a perfectionist and a professional, as I remember. Uh,
Yeah.
this is exciting for me on, like I said, multiple levels. First of all, just just not even 12 months ago, people were shoveling dirt on the Oklahoma program, which I thought was the silliest thing I'd ever seen. You can't be good for 70 years and then forget how to be good. That's not really how things work in any industry. And college football, I hate to break it to you, as an industry, kids, wrapped around education, sort of, kind of, and a sport also laid on top. But there's a machine underneath it all. And once you've built that machine, unless something comes along and either disassembles it or breaks it, shout out to Nebraska. Generally, the machine keeps going. But I'm going to take this moment to ask you what has happened to take Oklahoma from. I have friends out, my friend Carl, who are like on the brink last year, like they were losing it and saying ludicrous things, and you know what the message boards were like. It was the end is nigh, the seventh seal is broken. They were wearing sackcloth and ashes. What has happened to get you from that to what I guess is more normalcy when it comes to the program?
Well, it's interesting just seeing people's reactions from you know from 21 to 22, and where people tend to forget that 21 was Lincoln Riley's last season was pretty close to being just like 22.
Hmm.
Um, you take the same amount of 3-point wins, 4-point wins, you flip those around, turn them into 3-point losses. Um, we beat West Virginia by 3 and 21, lose to them by 3 and 22, and so there was already in some areas there was some things that were going wrong uh, previously, even before the he said she said Lincoln says USC showed up right after Bedlam. Um, surprise. I don't know how many people believe that. I'm not one of them. Uh, you just that's sort of thing just doesn't happen. And so parts of me was seeing or feeling like even we were 2 or 3 games into the 21 season. We're struggling with Tulane,
Yep.
and then we struggle. I mean, we're kind of struggling with everybody for a little bit. Struggled with Kansas.
Hmm.
Uh, this is before Kansas turned around it last year. Um, but it was like something's, me and my friends are watching the games. I'm talking to my friends close to the program. I'm like, something's not right. I mean, you just could not watch any Oklahoma football and go, something is not right. Um, People are distracted. Spencer Rattler tears it up, and 20 comes out, throws 30 touchdowns, 7 picks, and then 21 rolls around, and all of a sudden he can't do anything. Um, It was just like there was like a fog that was over the program, the players, the coaches. Um, again, I can't. I'm not too much on conspiracy theories and saying one foot was out the door the whole time, but there certainly was some evidence that something was going on there that would lead to that was going to be his last season.
So you don't feel like he just went out to a bar, bumped into somebody, and they're like, "Hey, how'd you like to coach on the West Coast?"
I,
Um,
and it's funny too, and it's just I don't know how much of the whole story is out there, but it was just from we just lost to OSU, which is really unacceptable around here.
Mhm.
Oklahoma State for we
yes,
should call them OSU around here, but there's
right.
another one.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, uh, you lose that game. He comes out in the post game conference, presser, and he says, I am not going to LSU, and made sure
Aha.
to emphasize he was not going to LSU,
Mhm.
and then by the next morning, he's headed to USC, and the story goes that he wasn't even going to talk to the team, and Bob Stoops got a hold of him, crossed paths with him in a hallway, and basically said, you need to man up and at least go tell this team what's going on. And of course, the whole team rallied around Bob, you know, go out and beat Oregon. Um, but last year it was, there was there was a false positive after those first few games last year. Um, you don't lose a Caleb Williams and stay the same. I mean, you just
That's
you
the
just don't,
football analysis we brought you on here for. Get him.
right? I mean, and you just be honest with you. I mean, yeah, Lincoln Riley is one of the greatest offensive minds that our college football has ever seen. I mean, and you don't lose that. But even more than that, you don't lose generational Caleb Williams. And bless his heart, Dylan Gabriel had to be that guy. Um, you just don't step back from that, and everything remains the same.
Right.
And so, that was a lot of tremendous losses. I mean, you know, 3/4 of the team is out the door by the time season starts. Um, but I'm fairly confident that I'll be honest, I'm still out whether Venables is head coach material or not. I'm still out.
Mm, mm.
You know, um,
Mhm.
and that's not being disrespectful to him. It's just you know last season just didn't return a good grade, and
Mhm.
in some areas, and so. Again, through the first few 3 games this season, it's like, boy, ESPN's got us at a 51% track to return to the college playoff this year,
Mhm.
and I'm like, man, I'm not buying into that, not yet anyway. And I hope they
Okay.
prove me wrong, but I'm not buying in yet.
And this brings me to my next question. Then I'm going to throw it open to my co-host. I too have been watching Oklahoma for a long time. We both are old, and things that I always notice, even when Oklahoma went away from being triple option and embraced the new world, they still had at least one guy on defense that was seemingly trying to separate people from their spleens, their spines, their intestines. That guy might not even be a real NFL prospect, but there's one guy I thought, oh yeah, that guy's insane. Like something's wrong with him. I haven't seen that guy in a while on Oklahoma's roster, where it's like, oh, this guy is just trying to injure people. Not injure people, you know what I mean? Like
Oh.
injure
Mentally
within the
deranged.
framework of right, the
Yeah,
framework of
A,
clean play. Is what
a
I
little
meant.
cuckoo.
right.
Wants to
Right,
be
but
that Wes
right,
Buster.
Captain Insano. Right, I haven't seen that guy. Used to have at least one in the old days, maybe two or three, but at least one more recently because football's changing. I get it, but I haven't seen that guy in a few years. I didn't see him a couple of years ago. I didn't see him last year. Maybe I haven't seen him thus far this year. Maybe he's there and I haven't seen him yet. That stands out to me. You guys at one point went from having no tight ends. I mean, we're not using the tight ends very much. Then Keith Jackson onward, you had pretty good tight end play for a while, and then that kind of went away recently. And you can help me. Maybe there's a tight end I haven't spotted yet, and that's not everything. I mean, you can be a good team without tight end play or that great tight end play, but the way this offense works now, Dylan, and we mentioned Dylan Gabriel, and once again, there's nothing wrong with Dylan Gabriel. Everyone at some point has had a Dylan Gabriel in their life. Maybe it's in your love life, maybe it's in your business life, but at some point you say to yourself, "Hey, you know what? I'm leaving the bar with somebody." Um,
Right.
the I think an emergence of a really good tight end would help, particularly that kind of quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and using him, not just maybe he's there and he's not being used. I mean, once again, you can help me with that. And then last but not least, there's usually someone, and it's not. Sometimes it's the same person as the person I talked about. That everybody falls in the line when they say, "Nope, we're not doing this." Right? There's usually somebody. I mean, going back to the early 1970s. I mean, when Leroy Selman said something, people were like, "Yes, sir." Right? Coaches sometimes be like,
Right.
"Yes, sir." Like Leroy Selman, everybody respected Leroy. Dewey Selman, slightly less, but basically, you have three Selman brothers that everybody listened to: coaches, staff, administrators. Right? You go a few years later. I mean, people think of Bosworth as basically white Deion Sanders, and they're not 100% wrong. But he also was a super hard worker, right? He was a guy that, for whatever else you want to say about him, he took football incredibly seriously. Did he have side stuff going on? Yes, but he wasn't Johnny Manziel. He wasn't one of those people where football was almost like the side thing and all the other stuff was the main thing. No, football was the main thing to him, and his other stuff, his personas and his whatevers, were an addition to his football playing. And you said something about not just the coach having one foot, out the door. But you said three-quarters of the team, and I don't think that's a slight exaggeration, not a big exaggeration. I think I can't remember the exact number, but 20 something players transferred.
Yeah, it was around
I think it
22
was
or 23.
Yeah, I think it's right, 22, 23. So that's not three-quarters, but it's a big number. It's a freakishly large number for a top flight program to lose all at once. And so I do want to pick up with if there is a player that I don't know about, who is that guy? Everybody's like, well, one, who's trying to maybe, take some people out, but two, everybody respects. Everybody, universally, all throughout the program respects, and I just don't know it. And then last but not least, is there a tight end, maybe a hidden gem that will help a Dylan Gabriel type quarterback to be more efficient and more effective? And
So,
then Brock has questions.
okay. So, talking about how old we are, or maybe you are, not me. Um, uh, Friday was the 46th anniversary of the OU Pitt game, which
Oh,
featured Tony Dorsett and
yes,
Joe Washington.
yes.
And that day, Tony Dorsett was held to his lowest career in college football, lowest number in his career in college football. He was held to 17 yards on 12 carries. And there's a hit, probably the most famous hit in OU lore before the Roy Williams Superman
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
was a play, and I'm sure you've seen it, in replay where Dorsett gets knocked about 4 yards backwards,
Yes, right.
running around the left side, and
Absolutely.
then even fast forward to that in 2018. Today is the 5-year anniversary of Kenneth Murray getting 28 tackles against Army,
Yes,
which
right.
which is a record that stands as far as measuring tackles goes. If someone ever did it, they didn't do it in an age of where they actually kept stats.
Right.
Um, and so you would ask who is the guy, um, and the first name I'll immediately have to go to as far as the defense goes will have to be Danny Stutzman.
Mm.
Um, he was national defender or linebacker of the week against SMU, and then he came back against Tulsa, returned a pick six. Uh, Solid hitter. He's a junior this year. A solid tackler. He kind of reminds me of. He's a little bit more in the Travis Lewis
Mm.
um,
Okay.
area. He's not necessarily looking to clean your clock, but he is going to be in on every tackle. Um,
Okay.
Probably the guy that I'm thinking of that would be. He's kind of a little out there as far as hitting, and that will be the middle linebacker Jaron Kinnick. Um,
Mm.
he's a sophomore. They tried to play him and this was it. He was so bad last year, as a freshman coming in. He was so athletic they had to put him on the field,
Mm.
um, but he didn't know what he was doing. And Venables come out, several times, and they were saying, "Why is this kid not on the field?" And it's like he does not know what he's doing. And when they did, there's one. I think it was a Kansas State game. They put him in on a goal line play, and I mean, he goes in as hard as he can. He was just hitting someone else's gap.
Oh yeah.
That type of guy. But athletic, he's kind of in that Teddy Lehman grade as far as track star coming out of college or coming out of high school. Freak of nature athlete, and when he
Mm.
does lay the lumber, it's usually pretty good. I would say generally another name, and he probably is not a prospect, would be Texas Tech transfer Reggie Pearson. Um, he was penalized, I think, the first game for late hit out of bounds on the quarterback right off the bat. Um, he's pretty solid. He's kind of a headhunter. Um, the rest of those guys we have back there in the back, I think Key Lawrence is a guy that can be that guy, but um, I think we're kind of mostly have gone into just skill set. We don't really have um, that kind of that insane. I don't know other way to say it.
Hmm.
That guy that just comes in and would try and tackle a tree stump if it was in front of him.
Yep.
Um, that type of player. But I would say Denny Stutzman and Jaron Connect are both guys that I would probably keep my eye on, because especially Stutzman. He's a junior this year. Um, like I said, he honestly he could have won a National Defender of the Week last week too. The way he played,
Mm.
um, it just so happened we were playing Tulsa, and I'm sure people weren't really um, willing to give that up for that game. But against SMU, he looked good, and now transitive properties in college football just don't work.
Mm.
You can't say Team A blew out Team B, so Team C should be able to blow out Team B. That doesn't quite work that way. But I'll say I think that SMU squad's probably a little bit better than what people think.
Oh, they are.
Um,
Yeah.
they've got some quality, and they got Coach Tibbs down there on the defensive line, former Sooner down there coaching on the D line, and those guys are a little bit better than what people think. But that's kind of where we're at now as far as the tight end game goes, and it feels like, and just from last year and this year, looking at the way Levy does things and looking back at his time at UCF and at Ole Miss, that it doesn't appear the tight end game is much a part of what he does.
Mm.
I kind of feel like they're using more Drake Stoops in that form. Like he had 8 catches
Okay.
for like 60 yards last week. Um, as far as that guy that's just going to be that safety pocket for you, Drake's kind of been that guy. Um, and I mean, you gotta love that kid. I mean, he's
Yeah.
walk on. I know his last name. We know who his dad is, but I mean, he's deserved every bit of attention he's gotten.
Hmm.
Just a coach's kid,
Yep.
that comes out and plays hard. Um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, that's kind of who's we got Austin Stoddard came back from South Carolina,
Mm.
and really thought that he left producing those guys produced 30 35 catches. Again, that was under Lincoln Riley. Um, Follow Spencer Rattler goes to South Carolina, comes back after 1 year, and so far he's just been really quiet.
Hmm.
Um, See him on the field, but not really necessarily, and the ball's not coming to him very much.
Right.
Uh, so I feel like with Levy's style of offense, what we're doing right now, which is it's in that Art Briles, Kendall Briles playbook. I mean, that's his father-in-law, so
Right.
that's that's what he knows. I just don't know we'll see a whole lot of tight end play under him.
Yeah. I figured the answer would be something along those lines, and obviously we very famously got to see an Art Briles appearance on camera and
Man,
on campus. And yeah, I know.
last year, going into season, people are pretty excited about the season, and then 21-year coach at Oklahoma, Cale Gundy, has to get fired before season starts. Right
Mm.
before season starts, they had the trouble with him,
Yep.
repeating some rap lyrics in the meeting,
Yep.
and that hurt. You don't lose a guy that's been there that long who recruits that well. I mean, Cale Gundy,
Yes.
heck of a recruiter, and you lose that guy right going in. Then we were coming through. We just really did not play well against SMU offensively, and then the news right after the game is over is, hey, here's Art Browse down in Sooner colors on the football field, and then Levy doubles down in the press conference. And
Right.
it's like, that's my daddy-in-law. What do y'all expect me to do? And then he goes to social media and turns all of his pictures to pictures with him and Art.
Oh.
And it was kind of like, man, I mean, here we go again, But whatever, because whatever Venables and or Castiglione said to Levy after that, the message was well received.
Yes, I agree, and it was a message that clearly needed to be received. Uh, I I actually like Coach Levy as a coach, but yeah, that was a he apparently didn't attend the social media trainings. So Brock, I'm assuming you have some questions. You may fire when ready.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show, Nolan. I mean, I love talking Oklahoma football for a variety of reasons. Maybe because the first time I ever got flamed on Twitter was from Sooner fans, and your message boards are just they are must watch TV. And I get it because I wrote a whole conspiracy article about Lincoln Riley's hire too. But let's talk about Brett Venables for a little bit. I am out on Venables, and I've been out for a while. I don't think that he's ready to command the program like Oklahoma because of the changing landscape in college football. There are certain things that I found troublesome. I want to get your opinion on my take. I don't know if he truly is able to understand the transfer portal at a level that is needed as Oklahoma transfers to the SEC, considering that he was under Dabble Sweeney for so long, who is the antithesis of what modern college football is. Secondly, he's had a PR nightmare since the moment he's walked into Oklahoma. Not only has he been lifted to this kind of almost godlike level by Sooner fans because he is the son that came home, the DC that won the national championship in the early 2000s, and now he's coming back as a head coach. I've seen all those shirts printed of Bud and Barry and Bob and then T-Bow and then Brett. Like we all seen that. So he was already put on his pedestal and he's not living up to expectations while USC is killing it out west. The next thing is obviously we talk about the Kel Gundy incident. I know a lot of people in Norman are still very upset that Kel Gundy got fired. I know Oklahoma players came out in defense of Gundy. That was a complete situation that he didn't have any like responsibility of, but still have to make a decision as head coach. You have the whole Jeff Levy incident. He has been able to secure his quarterback room well, bring in Dylan Gabriel while Jackson Dart came in on a visit and they didn't get him. And Caleb Williams seemed like he still wanted to play at Oklahoma, but they let him go to USC. And then when I see all these pictures of recruiting trips, you know who's also in those pictures? Bob Stoops. And I'm not thinking that Stoops is going to step on any toes because that's not the kind of guy he is. But I do think that if push comes to shove and Venables can't get it done within the next 4 or 5 weeks and that seat starts heating up, I think that there is a plan to bring Stoops back, especially since we've seen that he still has the coaching bug in the XFL. He's still out there recruiting for Oklahoma. And I think that he wasn't really happy about the way that he had to leave Oklahoma. He wasn't forced out, but he did it in order to keep Lincoln Riley there. I think that when he finally beat Oregon in I think the Alamo Bowl, it kind of got the juices started up again. I think I think Venables is in a really bad spot. What do you think?
Well, and I'm going to feed into any conspiracy theory you have because I really enjoy them. And
Oh, we're gonna talk about that real soon.
Oh
listen,
no.
listen. When one of the things is when I first started doing this with Bill way back in the day, was yes, I'm a fan, I'm a season ticket holder, but if I can't call it straight, then I need to be doing something else. And so I've really have done my best to always take very neutral looks. And let's go back first to the way Bob Stoops left that summer. Um, you know, there was a number of things that come into play. People, why is Bob leaving? And I want to say that yes, part of it was Lincoln keeping Lincoln Riley there, going ahead like eventually it's going to be his, so go ahead and hand the keys over to him now. But there's two other things that really come into play. Number one was health. Um,
Hmm.
Bob's dad had died on the sidelines, uh, about the same age that Bob was at when he stepped down from the program.
Was it 58? Is that the age his dad was when he died?
Yes, yeah. So kind of around the same number. You know, um, I think that really came into play. Number two, people don't know how much the Joe Mixon issue messed with Bob personally. They have no idea just that decision alone how hard it was for him. Even a year after he stepped down from the program, and somebody was talking about the reasons why, and he just kind of mentioned that in passing. But I really that whole I don't know that people realize how much pressure that put on him. To what do you do in that situation? And um, I think Bob also saw that NIL is not new.
Mm.
It's new to being legal. Um, it's new as far as, but I mean, as far as making it legal, transfer portal, those things have been discussed for a long time. They just didn't all of a sudden appear.
Right.
Um, Bob, I think, kind of understanding that was coming down the pike was like, I can't do that. And I'm thankful if that's part of it. I'm thankful because you look at what's going on in Clemson right now. Um,
Mm.
a coach who just and right now Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State right now is in
Yeah, bad.
shambles because of Gundy's stances towards NIL and transfer portal.
Right.
I mean, Trace Ford, who's at Oklahoma now, said, you know, I'm weighing with this decision whether I'm going to leave or not. He said, and everybody knows it. And he said, I've had zero conversations with Coach Gundy. Like he's talked to, he made no effort to come talk to me. And there's other players that that Tulsa team we just played, chock full of former OSU players,
Yep.
all saying the same thing. It's like pretty much, hey, Gundy didn't even care whether we was there or we weren't there. And so I'm thankful if that's what Bob was leaning towards. That he did step aside when he did. But getting back to Brent, um, and again, we just came from Bob Stoops to Lincoln Riley to Coach Venables, and those are two tough men to follow.
Mm.
Um, every mistake you make as a coach is going to get magnified when you follow, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You're not going to follow Lincoln Riley, and every hiccup you have in offense is not going to just glowingly show itself off. It happened last year in the Oklahoma State game. Up 28-0 with 5 or 6 minutes into the game. Uh, and then we're in the fourth quarter up 28-13, and we're still snapping the ball with 25 seconds left on the clock.
Mm.
Uh, you know, just things like that where it's like, man, Lincoln knows in this situation, Lincoln would know exactly what to do. Um, you know, it's tough. It's tough to come home and coach,
Mm.
and you knew when the way Lincoln left that Castiglione, who's made great hires in every sport for the most part, um, you knew he was going to try and land someone fast and someone that was going to strike a note with the donors.
Mm.
More than the fans, it's about the donors, the guys with the money. Who do they want? And I can tell you that the donors who do not coach football, who watch football like the rest of us,
Mm.
and aren't the type of people that should be making hiring decisions, they made this hire. And
Oh.
so,
Ah.
you know, it happened so quickly, and I'm gonna tell you, 3 days after Lincoln left, you'd have thought the whole Oklahoma football, just the legacy was over.
Yeah.
And-
Holy
and-
moly, social media thought it was a tragedy. Oh, I thought
right.
someone died. I thought someone died. It was so bad.
I mean, and that was the approach to it. So it was like, who was going to be the best hire, and honestly, someone that wasn't going to tell us no.
Mm. Okay.
We can't go through it. What Texas has gone through in the past, where they're courting someone, and then the coach, they court for a while, then they tell them no. It had to be someone that you just knew, like, hey, when I offer this person a job, they're going to take it.
Mm.
But
Well, that.
Brock,
I'm
I
sorry.
am
Go
with
ahead.
you though. I I mean, I drink a big cup of I don't know every day with Coach Venables. Like I you know it's hey, we're 3-0. Last year we started out 3-0 also.
Yep.
Um, and so we rolled a pretty good Kent State team last year who went and gave Georgia fits. Thought, hey, that we're better than what we think. And then we go into Lincoln, Nebraska, and completely pulverize those guys. And then it's like, oh, and the defensive numbers through those 3 games were just incredible. We're
Yep.
giving up 3 points, 14 points, not like the Lincoln Riley years of winning 52-30. And so we come out of 3 games, and I just remember, like, you know everybody turned, into the we're back guy. We're back.
We're
And
back.
and even I was like, man, I was like, I just kept thinking we're way further ahead of the curve than I thought we were. And then Kansas State.
Yep.
I mean, just out coached in every facet of the game. Like every facet of the game. And then TCU, I mean, I know who TCU ended up being, but it was just a travesty. I mean, it was like, you know, and we can talk about Texas and 49 to nothing, but I think that game in itself really not losing, but the decisions that were being made.
Oh Lord, yeah. Eric Gray's jump pass. Don't get me started on that. What was that? You guys were driving. I thought this was gonna be the change of momentum. So to get OU back in the game. Texas has for the past couple of years gotten out to early leads. OU comes storming back. This is gonna be same old and picked. And then you guys never got a legitimate opportunity to score again.
It's
Awful.
we come out, we've got a tight end starting at quarterback, and I'm like, okay, and we just ran the Wildcat 5 or 6 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I've never seen the Wildcat as the offense, um, but I thought this is the best we can do is throwing out a tight end at quarterback. Braden Willis, who's an excellent athlete, you know, did an excellent job. He's on San Francisco 49ers roster, played the other night.
Yep.
Um, but, when he's your starting quarterback and you're Oklahoma, uh, that
And it's not
it doesn't make sense at all.
1974.
Yeah.
If it's not
Right.
1974.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not 1974.
Right,
It's not Quick Bell.
Right, exactly. We don't have the belldozer back there.
Right. You didn't bring back triple option for real.
It's
Yeah. Jameel Holloway isn't walking through the doors anytime
I mean,
soon.
the way. Hey, with the way that they game plan, they might as well have. I mean, like, hey, let's try and stall some of it for the week because it was like they come in with no plan. I mean, no plan at all. And even after half, you're just thinking, okay, here's the things that worked. Like Brock was talking about, these things worked, and then they never did them again. I mean, with all the limits and all the things that were going on, you know what I mean? Like if you don't believe in your quarterback, which evidently Davis Bevel is not that guy. I don't even.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, flashbacks.
Yeah.
But I mean, just shove the ball to Eric Gray.
Eric Gray
just
was
keep running it.
destroying him. Sorry,
Yeah.
no,
Go ahead. It's just like everything we could do to snatch defeat from the hands of victory. That's what happened.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the Texas game wasn't a game that really put me on alert because we knew Dylan Gabriel was I think was out for that game, and then obviously Texas had that incredible offense, so that was one thing. The being blanked was not good, but it is what it is. The Texas Tech game is when the bells started ringing in my head because their offensive scheme for the Red Raiders was very simple. If the DBs are backing off the ball, we're throwing the screen. If they're coming up, we're throwing the deep ball. And they were successful at it. The problem that I was having is that Venables' defense was backing off of the receivers on like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. Like if there's any time to try and jam someone at the line, I thought that was the point. And if Brett Venables is this incredible defensive mastermind who won 3 national championships as a DC, who was making $2 million as an assistant, what is going on? And then into the offseason, he had that whole spiel about, we gave our guys 1 year, blah, 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 blah. And then he made the Deion Sanders comment. When he specifically called out a coach, I felt that there was a lack of confidence in his own program in order to make a statement like that. And that's where my major concerns for him in the future come from, especially as Texas is clearly more prepared to transfer to the SEC than OU is, in my opinion. I am very, very concerned right now, especially since, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Jeff Lebby, I don't believe is a good offensive coordinator. I think he has good offensive ideas, I think if he was in a group of five, it'd be different. But this is big boy football, and when you get into tougher competition, you can't complete those passes. You gotta get yards up in the trenches. I'm not sure this Oklahoma team is built for that, especially since they don't know how to use a tight end. Drake Stoops is number two on this team in wide receiver talent behind Farouk, in my opinion. Which
Mm-hmm.
I like Drake Stoops, but it's not. He's not. He's not CeeDee Lamb. He's not Hollywood Brown. We can go back a little bit. He's not.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
a
who is that wide receiver
guy who's
that got
like an
whacked by
undrafted free
Major Ray
agent,
in the national
late
championship?
seventh rounder, ends up with the Patriots. Yes,
Yeah.
Patriots are already looking hard at him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he's not Malcolm Kelly, you know. And like, where's that wide receiver talent we're so accustomed to? Where is the interior offensive lineman talent, or even just offensive line talent in general? We're all accustomed to. This is a program that sent Trent Williams to the league, Lane Johnson to the league, Creed Humphrey into the league. Those are three offensive linemen that are arguably number one at their position at the pro level. Where are all those guys right now? I don't see them. I think that the SMU game is kind of a wake up call that if they don't get their stuff together when they enter Big 12 play this year, they're going to get boat raced in a couple of these games. Now, I think that they can have a very successful year, but is 8 wins the mark that Oklahoma allows? Because they've been having double digit wins, it feels like, every year for the past 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. When I look at these message boards and I look at social media, which I love, by the way, I don't understand where this belief in him is, and I'm not seeing the evidence that says this dude is the dude. Do you see? I know you already expressed your own concerns. Do you see anything that says, oh, okay, there's potential here?
So if we're going to just take it up to this point, do I want to believe? Absolutely. Uh, do I see something? Do I see Bob Stoops? Do I see Lincoln Riley? Um, no. Um, talking about Jeff Lebby, when he was coming through the process of, right after he left Ole Miss, the Ole Miss fans, led into, well, it's fine we lost him because everybody knows Lane Kiffin calls the plays anyway. And of course, it was like people rushed to Jeff Lebby's defense, and it's like, oh no, no, it's him. He's really great. And one of my best friends, JD Reynolds, was Jeff Lebby's roommate at OU. And so, I would never, JD's and I's conversations, it was just about him as a teammate and how much he loved him, and as a guy he played with, a guy he shared a locker room with till he got hurt. Um, but I feel like the separate pulling him away from Lane Kiffin has really exposed him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not that same the feel for the game, the feel for things aren't working. What do I have in my tool pouch that this is going to work? What this is what the defense is doing. This I've got this in here, and this is going to work no matter what. And this is going to help us get momentum back. There's so many games last year, and I think that was the most disheartening part was just having momentum and then losing it on the offensive side. Um, and before with Lincoln, it was defense losing momentum and the offense getting it back. But last year it flipped where we had games where the defense just come out and played well. But when your offense is going 3 and out at the speed of light, eventually you wear out. I mean, you wear out when other teams getting 85, 86 snaps because you can't get first down. You can't get 3rd and 1 against West Virginia.
Mm.
You can't get 4th and short. You can't extend drives any. And I'm lost it to the point it was right now. But someone ran a couple of times. We had 80 something, 84, 85 plays ran against us last year.
Right.
And so it was when those situations happen. I haven't seen him know how to handle it. I haven't seen Levy know, like, okay, this is what we need to do, or we absolutely lose momentum, which happens in it happens in most games. You play a decent opponent, your momentum goes one way, that goes the other, and so far offensively, I haven't seen us take that back. It's almost predictable that Once the opponent gets momentum headed their way, it's almost predictable that the next series is going to be a 3-and-out. It's almost like the crowd gets into the game. You feel that momentum. You feel that part of the game. Sometimes I feel like he lacks that feel
Hmm.
for the game on the offensive side of the ball, and so um, there's just several times that hurt us. Um, you know, Lincoln didn't leave. I'll say this for Brent. Lincoln didn't leave him in the best position.
Yeah.
Um, Again, the timing of all that, how it all happened. Um, I'll say this, Brock. Um, he has the recruiting on defense has definitely picked up, which I feel is going to be important for SEC play. Um, our we're able, we just signed Danny Okoye, a 4-star, the number one recruit in Oklahoma, just committed. David Stone, another defensive line commit. We've got 4 or 5 stars coming in a 24 class on a defensive line, which I think is huge. Like you've got to have those guys if you're going to compete in the SEC. Um, my concern is on the other side of the football. Um, and Brock, here's my concern on this. Um, and I'm not saying fire Jeff Lebby. Um, what I want to know is, can he make that call? Since that's his guy, can he make that call when the time needs to, when it if it needs to happen?
Hmm.
Um, that's part of being. Bob Stoops had to let Josh Heupel go.
Sure.
You know, that's a tough call. That's a tough decision to make.
Right.
Um,
He
you, you
went to
know,
that man's home when he was 16 and a half years old and said, you know, come grow up basically with me. I mean, he watched Josh Heupel go from being a 183-pound, not terribly physically impressive, but rapid processing, get the ball out kind of guy, Kellen
yeah,
Moore for rednecks, and, helped him sort of grow up into what he is now. I mean, one of the hottest names in coaching.
Mhm.
And yeah,
right.
I remember, and you remember better than I do, the whole, I don't, controversy is probably too strong word, but there were people pulling for and people pulling against Heupel. Uh, what do you think finally got Stoops to the point where he finally pulled the trigger on that?
So what we saw was, and here's a classic example, and I'll use the guy Landry Jones. Um, Landry Jones, um, his freshman year has to step in for Bradford. Kevin Wilson's OC at that point, Heupel's quarterback coach. We saw a lot of improvement from Landry Jones that first part of his career, and then Wilson leaves, goes to Indiana,
Yep.
and Heupel gets the keys to the offense. And it was almost like immediately the offense just bleh. I mean, just Landry Jones quit getting better.
Mm.
I'll never forget the quarterback coach from Pittsburgh, Randy. Oh, his last name escapes me. The Steelers.
Victor.
You know, yeah, him saying that Landry Jones was the least prepared quarterback he had ever seen in all his years at Pittsburgh.
Oh,
And so, um, and then it also, you had what was going on with Mike Stoops started about that time. And
Mhm.
what Bob did was save Mike's life. That's
hmm.
that's why Bob hired Mike. It wasn't a football decision. It was his life was things were going down really quick for him. And so, marriage had just ended. Arizona was going to fire him. Uh, things were not going his way. And I feel like there was some concerns about Mike, just the person. And so he hired him. And Bob was not going to fire Mike. But the whole coaching staff had become so stagnant. It was almost like a wake up call to everyone. Because, right around this time, also, Bill, he let Jackie Ship go,
Right.
who'd
Speaking of
been there from the
Oklahoma
beginning.
legends, yeah.
Yeah. Um, a lot of those guys had gotten lazy on the job.
Hmm.
And I don't know how to say it. Jackie Ship was supposed to have been in Tulsa recruiting players, and he was out on the golf course.
Oh,
Um, That was pretty much what ended his time there. Um,
Mm.
but he had to make a tough call there. And everybody sees Josh now, and they're like, "Well, that was a mistake." Well, Josh wasn't ready to be offensive coordinator at Oklahoma in
Mm.
2010, 2011. He wasn't ready for that. I mean, we're talking it's 12 years later now. Obviously, he's progressed as a person, as a coach, and all of that. But Bob was and Brock. Let me go back to another thing I was going to bring up too. That one thing people don't know about is how involved in the offense Bob Stoops was.
Mhm.
Um, they think of him as a defensive guy, which he was. What he did at Florida, what he did at Kansas State.
Right.
JD told me this when he played for Oklahoma. He said that every play call on offense went through Bob Stoops. That your run game coordinator had to play, your passing game coordinator had to play, your OC made the final, made the decision, but ultimately Bob could veto everybody.
Mhm.
And he said, they're on the mic, and he said Bob was actively involved in the offense, and if he felt like you weren't running the ball enough, he would get on the headset and let you know this is what we're going to do. These are and he knew the play call. This is the plays we're going to call. These are the things we're going to do. This is what's working for us. Um, Brent is so defensive minded
Right.
that there's not that system of checks and balances on the offensive side. You know, he's completely handed the house over. He's completely handed over to Levy and said, "Here, this is yours. Take off with it. Do what you need to do."
Mm.
And um, you got to, you don't think Saban doesn't know what's being called on every play?
Saban knows what everyone had for breakfast.
He can smell their breath, and he knows everything about them. Like he he is involved, and I think that even this year, you know, everybody discussing, what does exactly does Ted Roof do? Nobody knows. Um,
Oh.
Brent says he's a defensive coordinator, but then also he's involved in everything that's going on with the defense. Um,
Mm.
I feel like at some point, and it needs to be sooner rather than later, that he is going to have to involve himself more in the offense. Um, like I said, I bring up this Oklahoma State game last year because Oklahoma won it, but it was one of the worst coaching
Mm.
jobs I've ever seen.
Mm.
Um, just again, we're in the fourth quarter. We're up 28-0. Um, we're letting them kind of creep back into the game. We're in the fourth quarter. All we need to run the ball and finish out the clock.
Mhm.
And we're running fast break offense. And it's like does Brent not know to tell? Because Lebby doesn't know, obviously. So does
Uh.
Brent not know? Hey, you're gonna have to slow this down. You know, quit snapping the ball with 20 seconds left on the play clock.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know those type of things. I want to see that. And I feel like those need to be seen now. It's like, hey, that needs to be. We haven't had to see it so far yet, but when it comes to those games, we get into the conference play and we are in a battle with someone, and we need to run out the clock. Are we going to do that, or are we still going to keep trying to run the same offense we ran in the first quarter?
That's a perfect segue to the schedule. Um, Traditionally, you usually start ease yourself your way into the schedule, as you pointed out. That's
You play
cons-
lemons, is what he's saying.
I, I was simply indicating that this it might be wise even to sort of limber up a little bit, stretch out a little bit, and get ready for some of the games that are coming down the pike. This is an interesting, from this point forward, things get interesting. Oklahoma's got some stuff happening. Uh, as you mentioned, recruiting is picked up on defense, and help is coming, but not all of that help is here yet. I like some of the players that we talked about. I don't know why Jaleel Farouk doesn't get used more, but I do like Drake Stoops. He's, you know, all the
Yeah, he's one of
terms you
those
said, coaches.
first guys in, last
Yes,
guys out,
last
blue
who's
collar worker.
scrappy, blue
Kind of guy you have to
collar,
bring home to your daughter.
lunch
That kind
pail,
of player. But lunch pail, clocking in and
natural
out every
leader,
single day. Gritty.
gritty, yes, scrappy,
Yeah, all of the above.
all of the above. Um, but
Not
he's a guy that
tremendously gifted, but as a hard worker.
Right. He's a tremendously hard worker, and he's made plays that you wouldn't think Drake Stoops would make.
Yes.
So hats off to Drake Stoops because everybody who isn't good enough looks up to him and says, "Man, you know, maybe just maybe." Um, you bring in Walter Rouse. He's coming at left tackle. I've liked what I've seen so far from the kid Savion Bird at left guard. I'm not quite sure about the center. He's experienced, but he seems sometimes to get um, too far over skis and sometimes ends up on the ground. I need to watch more of him. You've got uh, Guyton at right tackle. I don't dislike him at all. We talked about the return of Austin Stogner. I don't know why he came back. He must be wondering
Yeah,
why he came back.
yeah,
Uh, I came back for this. Um, you've got you've got an interesting bunch of running backs. I've seen Barnes, and I think I'd like to see more of him. Major is your sort of like no frills guy, and you've got some real talent in Walker. Um, of course, buried unfortunately on the bench is General Booty, who of course is the starting quarterback on the All Name team.
absolutely.
Uh, you've got Arnold Jackson, obviously, who is the athlete, the raw player behind Dylan Gabriel. Um, and then obviously defense is what this team is supposed to be increasingly about. Uh, Lalu um, is
Hmm.
exactly what you think a guy named Jonah Lalu would be like.
Absolutely.
Uh, exactly the mental picture you have, that's what he looks like. You think how you think he plays, that's exactly how he plays. I don't know who the interior pressure guy is really yet, but I have to keep watching. But I have seen a few good snaps out of Dejon Terry. Rondell Bothroyd, I'm guessing, is the guy, amongst the defensive linemen. And you mentioned Stutzman, and I have seen him flash. I'll continue to watch him more. You mentioned also Kanik, who is, yes, really, really athletic. Um, the cheetah, right, which is sort of the different, like the old striker position in the old days, is a interesting sort of overhang defender. Sometimes covers tight ends or running backs in the backfield. Sometimes blitzes. Sometimes comes down the box and plays like a strong safety. You have to tell me what you think of those guys. Not one of them has really quite grabbed my attention yet. Amongst the guys I've seen play the position, I've seen a little bit of the transfer, whose name escapes me now, and then also I've seen Harrington. I don't know who your best corner is. They both look okay, but not one of them's like solidified in my mind. Reggie Pearson seems to be sort of the brains of the operation in the secondary, but once again, this is just for me watching. You may know more than I know. In fact, you should know more than I know. Uh, you seem to you seem to have solid enough special teams. Like I'm not wowed, but I haven't, as you mentioned, the Kansas State game. I haven't seen anything like that where it's like, oh, what are they doing? Like so that's good, right? When you don't really notice special teams, I guess that's kind of a
Right.
good thing. Take me through the roster construction as is, and then we can talk about the recruiting classes, both in the traditional recruiting and also the ever popular transfer portal.
Yeah. So, as you're going through the names, there is, um, I think this is a good sign. Last year, especially early on, one of the names that everybody was talking about was Reggie Grimes,
Mm-hmm.
and this year is nowhere to be seen. um, some guys came along that have stepped up. That are the transfer portal guys. You got Isaiah Coe, you got Terry up there. You've got Trace Ford from Oklahoma State. Ethan Downs Ethan Downs is a guy that um, just a hard nosed college football player, sophomore, good athlete. Um, Justin Harrington he's one of those puzzling guys for me. He's a redshirt senior,
Yep.
and he's one of those guys. About middle of last year, I'm like, he is who he said he is. There's not much to him, but I'll have to say that there's been a markable improvement from him.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this to you this other day that one of the things I'm most happy about as far as that position is just the size of the guy playing it. Um,
Yes.
Deshaun White, um, nice athlete, did some good things. But Justin Arrington 6'4", Dason McCullough from Indiana 6'5". Um, that's another guy that's probably going to be getting in there some more.
That's the
Um,
transfer. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name.
yeah,
Thank you. That's the transfer.
yeah. Other corners. Woody Washington's a redshirt senior, and he has flashes. Um, he's one of those guys that he may make the best play of the game and then turn and make the worst play of the game types. Um, he's kind of this year's Trey Brown for me. You're just like, man, this guy's really good, and then the next 5 plays, you're like, whoa, no, he's not. And then he, good athlete, not near the athlete Trey Brown is, but I mean, that's kind of that consistent play. Um, I've got Key Lawrence back there at free safety, um, behind Reggie Pearson. Um, I like Key Lawrence. I like his size. And again, that's one thing that's visibly different this year already is you are just seeing, and also it's because Schmitty back having a full year to get his workouts back in, and that's one thing the guys will tell you is that a lot of difference between Benny Wiley and Schmidt as far as strength and conditioning goes. We jokingly called Benny Wiley the jazzerciser. Uh, because guys got real lean and real athletic with him, but they didn't get bigger.
Got it.
And so, he's more, with Alex Grinch and that quote unquote speed D and that type of thing. He fits perfectly with him. But I do like, Schmidt coming back may be one of the key parts of this whole thing, offensive and defensive. Because Brock, you're right, and Bill, you too. When you talk about this offensive line, I mean, it's Bill Bednahl. You expect every year, just because it's him, that he's there's going to be two, there'll be at least one, just guy that's going to just jump out at you. And if you're not talking, Antoine Harrison last year, just some guy that you're really not aware of who they are, then all of a sudden, boy, there they are, and they're going to end up,
Yeah.
you know, and there's
And he was in
always
my
a
top 5, at the position ranking before the season's over. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just like there's always that guy, and so I'm looking through these guys. I'm like, who's going to be Antoine Harrison because nobody's on anybody's radar. And so I'm like, who's going to be that guy? And when I look up and down there, I'm like, I just don't see it. I just I don't see it on the two deep at all. Um, which remind me going to the wide receivers. Jalil Farouk should have the ball in his hands. Um, jet sweeps, bubble screens.
Bubble screen, right? The easiest play, but not the easiest play, but one of the simplest plays, one of the first plays you install in Jeff Lebby's offense, if unless I'm going crazy, is basically 3 different variations of bubble screens.
Right. And talking about the wide receiver talent, here in my opinion, and I mean it kind of came out last week. There are guys there that can play. There are wide receivers out there that can be something. We just can't get them the football.
Oh,
well,
that's worse almost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you saw
almost.
Rodney.
That's way worse.
Well, you've got Rodney Anderson's little brother Nick. I say little Nick Anderson. Last week caught 4 for over 100 and 3 touchdowns against Tulsa. 6'4", 200 pounds. Kid can run. It's one of those types. Let him go get a 50-50 ball. He can make plays. Jaden Gibson, 6'5", can run. He's the 2 or 3 times he has seen balls thrown to him, he catches them. He's gone up and gone over defenders and caught the football. Petaway, another. I mean, there's guys out there on the edges. It's just we're just not getting those guys the football. I'll just say that. Jackson Arnold came in last week and immediately threw the touchdown pass to Nick Anderson. He's bigger guy, bigger arm. And one of the worst parts for Dylan Gabriel is, usually if you're on the shorter end as a quarterback, those guys make up for it by getting out of the pocket. That is not Dylan Gabriel's strength.
No, sir.
And so, because throwing on the move and getting out of the pocket is not a strength. Now you've got 5'9.5" staying in the pocket, and it just it again. Usually, you think of even Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, you know, the guys from the past that were 5'10", 5'11", somewhere around in there. Maybe you would call them on the shorter end. You got them out of the pocket and they made plays because that was you know most of them have been playing short their whole lives.
Right.
So that's what you do.
Also,
But
those
it's
are
just
guys who were both those guys were really good deep ball throwers, and
right.
that's not so much the case now.
No, Dylan Gabriel's deep ball looks like someone's returning punts.
Yeah, it just flutters. There's no spiral. Just
No. Well, even last week when Jackson Arnold came in, he threw, say we threw that pass to Nick Anderson. That ball didn't get 15 foot off the ground. I mean,
Nope.
it was dart. Uh, Again, and when Gabriel goes deep, it's like the wide receivers. I mean, they're looking up in the sun. It's almost like I'm waiting for him to call fair catch because the ball is just it gets lost. It gets lost up in the air somewhere, and it's going to be underthrown typically.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, it's a complete different thing. And again, let me go back because people say I'm rough on Dylan Gabriel. He's a good college quarterback. He's doing the best that he can. His numbers right now are phenomenal. Um,
Right.
I mean, good for him. But he is who he is. Um,
Hmm.
and I'll be honest. I'm expected even as good as he is. I'm expecting more Jackson Arnold by the time Texas rolls around.
Really?
But yeah,
You heard it here first
yeah,
on College Football Forecast, brought to you by
yep.
Team MBS Sports.
And people are looking
Um,
at Dylan Gabriel's stats right now, going, "Why?" And I'm telling you, is
Because they put lemons. That's
they've
why.
they've had Jackson
SMU
Arnold
and
running
lemons.
right. They've had Jackson Arnold running the bulldozer so far, which I don't understand. Um, I mean, it's like you've got your best arm on the team, and you're having him duck his head and try and pick up third and short. And the kid can let it rip, but. Um, you'll see more of him. Those running backs you brought up, Marcus Major, man. I've watched Marcus play in high school up in Oklahoma City. Um, I won't mention his name now, but one of my best friends up in that area who played for OU that had followed him said, this guy's going to be an Adrian Peterson,
mm,
and and when you look at him physically,
physically,
uh,
right?
you can see it
Physically,
physically,
right?
but yeah, it
Acceleration matters, my friend, in football.
abs- absolutely. Um, you just mentioned Javante Barnes. Him and Gavin Sawchuk, the other running back. They both went for well over 100 against Florida State last year, and we thought going into this season it was going to be a lot of those two. And
Nope.
you know, I like Tawee Walker. I mean, 5'9", 215.
Yep.
Tough runner.
Yep.
But Barnes and Sawchuk are going to be the guys that if we're gonna be able to have that next big running back, it's got to be one of those two guys.
I'm going to give this back to Brock in a second. Do they not like big plays? Because that's what I'm starting to think. I'm noticing a theme here. Do they have a thing against explosive plays? Because everything you told me, okay, this guy can make plays. This guy's fast. But we're going with this other guy who isn't a big play player, isn't as fast. Um, it feels like obviously we talked about the restrictor plate at the quarterback. I get that. I get that you have a quarterback that is automatically going to sort of slow things down for you in terms of areas. But the running game is a place where you can still get big plays. And even he can get the ball to those guys on wheel routes and little shoot routes and angle routes, make one guy miss. A little play becomes a big play. Help me to
Absolutely.
understand why they aren't getting their fastest players in positions to win.
When I look at it, I feel like some of it is well. First of all, they've under Lincoln, it was the feeling generally was the offense is going to have to win this game, right? You went into every game during that time going the offense is just going to have to outscore the other team. I mean, you think about how good just going back to that 2018 team was. how good they were to make it to play to the college playoffs against Georgia offensively.
Right.
They were ranked 112th in defense. That's how good offensively they were.
Right.
You watch that team. Even every once in a while, I'll torture myself and throw back a little bit of that Georgia game. Uh, that team with no defense
Right.
was good enough offensively to still hang around with Georgia.
Yep.
I feel like the pendulum has completely gone the other way, and now I mean, you're seeing big scores last week. You saw big scores, but you didn't see big scores against SMU. And
Yep.
the defense. I mean, the score ended up being 28-11, but that game was a 14-11 game till about 6 minutes left.
Yeah. I tweeted
And
out upset alert at one point. Yeah.
Right, and it was a defense, and I feel like they've almost in those type of games, it's going to be we're offense just hold on to things, and defense go out and win the game for us, and I think that has brought on a little bit of that conservative offensive play, and that we just want to 4 or 5 yards at a time. It's almost like that's more or less what they're into instead of the the big plays that we've been used to for the decade plus before that. Because I look at this offensive side, and I look at those guys that we have out there at wide receiver. You look at the guys that we have at running back, and there are some incredibly talented guys there. Sawchuk and Barnes are both four-star guys coming out of high school. Nick Anderson was a 4-star guy coming out of Oregon. Jalil Farouk is just, I mean, he's a talent. I mean, he is a.
Well, enjoy him next year at USC. Is what I'll tell you. I'm joking. I'm kidding.
No. We're about to get death threats, Bill. Thank you.
Kidding. It's a joke.
That's not to them, Bill.
I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Bill, not to the people of Northern Oklahoma.
It's a joke. It's a joke. But
Bill,
I mean,
cheaper now. They can drive to Illinois.
It's mostly a joke, at least. I mean,
yeah.
It has to be frustrating when you're Jalil Farouk and you see all the fun that guys who are not better than him are having in other offenses. It has to eat away at him a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that your comment is going to eat away at OU fans. They lost Caleb Williams, Mario Williams Jr. is the receiver. How many guys did? The only person that OU is happy Riley took is Alex Grinch, who's the worst defensive player in college football. They're mad about everything else. Listen, I'm not trying to offend Norman, Oklahoma, much as funny as that is. But
no, it's
Jeff Lebby sucks. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that about coaches 3-0, but you played 2 turkeys. And the craziest part for Oklahoma is that if you guys can beat Texas, you guys should walk into the college football playoff because your schedule is lined with like 2 other good teams of turkeys. All right, you guys don't play Kansas State this year.
Thank God.
You guys put a turkey this week up in Cincinnati. Iowa State that well, that's not even talking about that. The Gamblers, you don't have to worry about them. UCF, but we don't exactly know how healthy Jarvis Plumlee is, and UCF is like shaky at times, and you guys play them at home, so you guys should beat them. They play at Kansas. They just had a struggle against Nevada last week. You guys should be good. Oklahoma State. Yeah, you guys are gonna boat race them in Bedlam. West Virginia. We don't even know if Neil Brown is gonna be there by that time. Then you guys play at BYU, which could be a trap game, but they couldn't even score against Sam Houston State, so I put no stock into their win against Oklahoma. And then you guys finish off at home at home against TCU, which you guys are clearly better than. So
yeah,
you guys are actually in a great spot if you guys can get past, Red River. Because
that's where we're headed next. We're headed next. So take us through this schedule. What things need to happen? But this is a team, as Brock said, that could run the table, could end up in the college football playoffs.
Because
you mentioned the 51 percentile number and all that good stuff. What has to happen? What has to change? What has to emerge? What has to solidify for that to happen?
Jeff Levy needs to stop making personal calls on school phones to his father-in-law. That should be probably. sorry, continue.
So even just starting, going to Cincinnati uh, this weekend. I remember us going up there when Butch Jones was there. Uh, Marty Gilliard, you know, Cincinnati can. I know they're not the Cincinnati of the last 2 or 3 years. Uh, Up to this point, this will be the best defense that we've seen, or the best. I say the best defensive line we've seen so far. And so I think guard play for us hadn't been so good so far, and so um, there's potential there. I'm not going to say Oklahoma's going to lose, but just talking with Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman and those guys are saying, hey, don't think we're just going to walk into Cincinnati and just blow them out. Um, Iowa State, I know they put up a whopping 7 against Ohio. Um, they're, you know, Last year a team lost to an FCS school that beat us the next week,
Oh
and
yeah.
so I, it's, I would say nothing, really. Honestly, I think that out of all these games left, the most gimme game is TCU. I just don't think TCU is good at all. Um, I said, losing Garrett Riley, uh, you know, Duggan, Johnson, um, I think all those things hurt them. But anyway, back to, beat Cincinnati. We should beat Iowa State. For us to get through Texas, just it's going to take offensive line play. Um, that's where it's going to, our guards are going to have to be better. Our tackles are going to have to be better. And there's going to have to be a big play on offense coming from somebody. Um, One of those running backs is going to have to establish himself. Um, I'm hoping it'll be Barnes. Uh, Looking at Levy's past, at UCF when he was at Ole Miss, there was always kind of like one guy got 15 carries, one guy got 9 carries, one guy got 4 carries. That was typical stat lines for
Mhm.
him. We're going to need someone that's going to be able to step up and get 20 plus and be able to stay in and um, be a solid 5 to 6 yard per type, and then be able to bust a. I think our longest run against SMU was 17 yards.
Hmm.
That's we're going to have someone that can go yard. Someone's going to have to be able to make big plays on that offense, because one thing for sure, no matter what, that momentum at OU Texas game goes back and forth, and
Yep.
you have to have an answer for whenever they get momentum. When Texas gets momentum, you have to have a special teams play. You're going to have an offensive play, not just defensive play. You're going to have an offensive player that's going to come in and do something big. Um, Texas is back every year, so I know a lot of people have been roasting me because I'm just saying, we're not going to win that game. But for us to win that game, and it's going to have to be one of those, Quinn Ewers is he's up and down,
Mhm.
and we're not going to beat him at his best. I mean, I don't know how to say that. I mean, he comes in ready to play. If we get Quinn Ewers against Wyoming, there's possibilities.
Got
If
it.
we get Quinn Ewers like against Alabama or someone like,
Right.
then
The Heisman Trophy
there's,
candidate version of him.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And the good
The
news is you don't
overrated
know which one of
NFL
those is going to
prospect.
show up. Right. Now that UCF game, just note real quick, John Reese is a really good friend of mine. He stayed at my house for a week. His junior year of high school, he was top
Oh,
baseball prospect,
right.
and so I
He,
have
he that
never.
that may still be where he plays professionally. He might still be a baseball player professionally, but
He is
yeah.
playing baseball at UCF, and so he. I remember watching him play, and he hit an infield hit. And this baseball tournament was just the top high school players in the country, and he hit a regular infield hit to third, and he beats the throw to first. And it's like you just don't do that in that level of play. Every one of these kids were Division I prospect, and he just outran a, a regular throw from third to first on an infield hit. I mean, that dude. And then he had the 200 yards rushing against Alabama his freshman year at Ole
Mhm.
Miss, and then Lane Kiffin comes in, moves in a wide receiver. But anyway, I love John Reese. He's a great athlete. He's a great person, and I hope he's back and well by that game. Um, that Kansas game, Bill. What world are we in? that
Where
Kansas
now you worry about the Kansas game. Yep. That was an automatic W from 1970-ish till about 3 years ago. And
right.
now you look at it like, it has trap game written all over it, doesn't it?
Well, when I look at the schedule, I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking at Texas and Kansas, and I'm like, man, this is odd, but um, you know, Kansas team is a team that could cause us trouble. Uh, have some legs at quarterback. Somebody can get out and move a little bit. Um, they could come in and you know at Kansas. Um, and again, like we discussed, this year it's us in Texas versus the Hateful Eight, and so I feel like we're going to get every time we play someone in the Hateful Eight, we're going to get their best. We're going to get their fans' best. We're going to get, if we're on the road, their fans are going to come at us with everything they got. Their locker room is going to be, these guys think they're too good to play against us. We're going to show them like we're going to be getting the Hateful Eight's best every week, whatever that best is. Oklahoma and Texas are going to get it, and I mean Kansas, I could, that's normally I would say West Virginia would be that game, but since we've got them at home, and who knows what Neil Brown's doing or will be doing at that point, but that Kansas game is a concern. Oklahoma State, I don't know if you know what I was going. They're rotating quarterbacks after every fourth series, no matter what.
Yep.
Gundy's
the
put his foot
CTE is
down.
hitting Gundy hard.
Gundy right now is Dabo Swinney with a lot less talent.
That is a perfect analogy.
I mean, just not. He doesn't have the guys to stand on his principles like Dabo Swinney does. You're not that good that you can get away with that. And so, you know what? I'm not a big fan of NIL, the transfer portal either. But you know what? Nobody cares. It's you know what I mean. It is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well go along with it and get involved in it and embrace it, or do what Bob Stoops did. Go put a microphone on. Go. USFL and the XFL is combining together. Go find one of those teams and coach.
I heard the OAN network is hiring too, so they might have a home.
Yeah. Chuba Hubbard, we can't wait for that to happen.
Well,
that was a good time for everybody.
That was a classic moment in the history of the game and America, really. History of America.
Mike Gundy signifies what not to do on a multitude of occasions. For someone that is so good at upsetting people as the underdog, whenever anything goes his way, he just knows how to shit the bucket.
Right.
Like having, I'm not trying to be rude here. Having only one conference championship.
Too late.
Sorry. Having only one conference championship in your entire tenure as head coach is unacceptable. Especially in that year since you lost to Iowa State, which crushed your national championship dreams. The way they lost to Baylor in the Big 12 championship game 2 years ago was downright criminal. Notre Dame should have boat raced them, but they still had a little bit of Brian Kelly in them, so they allowed to come back. I really can't name a time outside of maybe the Stanford Fiesta Bowl where Oklahoma State was highly favored and won. And even then, they needed a lot of things to break their way. The problem that I'm seeing is that a lot of things that I've said about Mike Gundy for the past 5 years of he's already hit his ceiling, Oklahoma State will never break through, you're starting to see the foundations of that build with Venables early in his tenure. Yes, they're 3-0 right now. They've also played 3 teams that are Group of 5, except SMU, who's on their way to the ACC. And we're not going to get into all that. When Oklahoma, historically, in my lifetime, has to go up against top opponents, they've lost. And I started watching college football about 2007. So I'm going to start off with the national championship game in 2008, which, Bill, by the way, you're not the only reason we're going to get death threats. I'm going to contribute to that. OU fans are so butthurt about that game. I will not stop talking about Major Wright's hit on Malcolm Kelly and how if Malcolm Kelly didn't get hurt, that they would have won the game. And boo hoo hoo bugaboo. All right, and everyone's still hurt about that. And then you keep going on. You talk about all those playoff losses on the final years under Stoops, and then obviously all those years under Riley. How under Riley's last year, you guys were the number one team in the country. Spencer Rattler was the projected number one overall pick. Everything in Norman was supposed to be great, and then you guys laid ducks. And then we'll get into a whole Lincoln Riley conspiracy theory after that. But, OU has not been able to win the big one consistently since I started watching college football, which is coming around, 15, 16 years at this point. What about Brett Venables says that this is changing? I don't see it. The offensive coordinator is not good in Jeff Lebby. I'm sorry. He's not. He does not have plays that go into rhythm. He doesn't have plays that work consistently. He doesn't have a system that a quarterback can play within to high success. And he just doesn't have the players around him that, make it happen. I think a lot of people have rose-colored glasses because of his performance at Ole Miss against Louisville when Kiffin was out with COVID. But that Ole Miss team was lined with studs, including Jarvis Plumlee at receiver. Also, shout out Jarvis Plumlee. I wrote a great article about him. A shameless plug. If he has some NIL money he wants to send my way, hit me up. But you look at everything Jeff Lebby has done, and there's nothing that's confident about it. People in Norman, I know, are still upset over Kill Gundy, and they haven't gotten over that loss yet. You got Art Briles as an influence, which is never a good thing. And I low-key think Art Briles is going to, blackmail Jeff Lebby into giving TCU the game plan against giving, you guys think I'm wrong, but like that's the worst thing Art Briles has ever done. Like, let's not mince words here. The last part about my argument why Brett Venables is just not the guy is, can he beat Texas? That's good. That's gonna be the only question from here on out. He got boat raced against them last year. He's expected to lose against them this year. If he does, he's gonna have to play them every year in the SEC again. That's the only game that means everything annually to Sooner fans. You cannot lose that game in the way that he does. If he gets blown out by Texas again, what does that say about him in this program? I'm at a loss for words about why this first 18 months have been such a, what's the right term? I don't want to say failure, but no, not even that. It's just below standard. And that's not what you expect. You expect Oklahoma to at least be at standard, and I don't see that. Do you have any insight of why? Like, I just don't understand why. You're the Sooners. You guys were the face of college football for the past 5 years, especially in terms of the offensive prowess of this team. This is a team that went up to Ohio State and won, planting the flag. You guys had players that were outspoken, that were just violent. Guys, like those linebackers, or players like Darian Turner Yell, or guys like Perion Winfrey, who truly love the program. You had great quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and all those guys. You had those guys are supplemented by dynamic playmakers. You look at the landscape of college football, every team has been able to pick up a dynamic playmaker, whether through regular recruiting or into the portal. We can go down the list and I can pick one out, except Oklahoma. And no offense to that Anthony kid from Michigan, but that's not the standard. I guess I'm going to rant, but I'm just at a loss for words. I'm looking for clarity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like you look at Anthony, if I was to go back to past teams, like who is he? I would say he's Justin Brown. That's who he is on the past teams. Penn State transfer, wide receiver. Justin Brown was never the number one at OU. Talent wise and different things I see, that's who Anthony kind of reminds me of. But here he is. Yet really, honestly right now he's the number one. And so, Brock, I can tell you so much more after this Texas game that happens October 7th, because where you're more certain, and I can't disagree with you. I mean, I can't debate you on that. I mean, honestly, I could debate you, but then I would be making up things I don't believe in myself. And so, I hear that makes great television, but I'm really not that guy that I can really just passionately defend something that I just, right now I don't believe. Now,
Yeah.
if somehow we come out of October 7th and we come out of there with honestly any type of win, any kind of win, um, I'll have something to feel good about. I'll feel better. Um, if 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 there's anything like 49-0 or you know 35-7, 35-14, um, because you're right. I mean, Oklahoma fans may not want to admit this, but uh, you got to beat Texas.
Hmm.
You got to beat Texas. Remember when in 19 when Kyler Murray lost to him that first time, uh, end up playing them again in the Big 12 championship game and beating them. It was like good season, guys. I mean, obviously we played after that, but that was, I mean, Texas beat us. We get a chance to get revenge. Go get revenge. You can't get blown out by them 2 years in a row. And I don't care if you're a first year coach, just started or who you are. Um, I'll take you back a little way before your time, Brock. Again, telling you how old Bill is here. Anyway, uh, there was a legendary coach named Barry Switzer. One
Mhm.
day program, things happen in the program. Overnight, he's gone. They bring in a defensive guy to hire named Gary Gibbs. Um, Gary Gibbs was solid in every way, but there was nothing great about him.
Right.
He was
Right.
very solid man, very solid coach, but there was nothing great.
Yep.
And so, Oklahoma puts together a couple of, a 9-3 season, and it just didn't work. I mean,
Mhm.
people say they should have kept Gary Gibbs. I'm like, well, I mean, honestly, it was better to cut ties when they did because 7 or 8 years of going 9-3, um, it's not going to work at Oklahoma. That works at Texas Tech. Um, you know
Yeah.
that works at maybe honestly in the past maybe works at Texas. I don't know. Uh, it does not work. It does not work at Oklahoma, and so they pushed him out the door. They bring in Howard Snellenberger, yada yada yada. We end up with Bob Stoops. Um,
There you go.
Bob Stoops. When people ask you about Bob Stoops' tenure at Oklahoma, it's going to be he owned Mac Brown.
Mm.
It's not going to be his second, win a national championship his second year, or all the Big 12 championships. It's going to be he owned Mac Brown. When Texas was good, OU was better. People fail to realize how good those Texas teams were because they lost to Oklahoma every year.
No,
Right.
you are absolutely on the money, and I feel like Brett Venables is very. And us is before my time, so you guys have a little more insight about it. But he feels very John Blakeish, if that makes sense. Really good
Oof.
rosters, not the turnout that you want. But there's a reason why Bob's won a national championship in his second year because John Blake had, as far as like from my research goes, had some really good guys in those OU teams after before he got fired. Like you bring in all this talent, but it's just not producing to the level that is acceptable. And for me, when Lincoln Riley left, and we're looking at a bunch of candidates, the one name that I always saw popping up in the message boards and on social media and everything was Dan Lanning. He's young, he's defensive minded, he understands the current climate of college football, and he's on a national championship team in Georgia. You guys, he ends up going to Oregon. You guys end up bringing in Brett Venables. You gotta feel like for some people that believe in that, there's gotta be buyer's remorse considering what we've seen him achieve with the Ducks so far. What do you think, Noel?
Well, again, just going back to um, I mean, I moved past the Lincoln Riley butthurt really quick. Like, you know, I mean, I was like, man, that's what a sorry way to do things. He did things completely wrong. Even had a recent, interview where he's saying, his house was, people were trying to break into his house at Norman, which both Norman police and the OU police were like, nothing happened. Uh, but and people are, he keeps digging up people's butt hurt. Like, bringing it back to the edge. Like, feel people are generally moving on. I moved on it pretty quickly because I'm and honestly, with the current climate of football with the transfer portal, okay, I'm like, okay, you know what? He can't hold players hostage anymore. So whatever he wants to do, go for it. I kind of moved on from that really quick, but I cannot stress enough how things were going in the media with Oklahoma football with those next few days. Um, if there's one thing of all the things that Bob Stoops did in his tenure again at OU, him stepping in when he did to get the team ready for, and in fact, it was him that did it. Bob Stoops coming out of retirement to lead practices up until the bowl game, and then coach the bowl game. That was so huge that he did that. But they wanted. It's like you're going to ask someone to prom, and you got this very hot girl, and the thing is, everybody else wants to ask her out too.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, I can't have her tell me no. I can't go to her and say no because everybody's going to know she told me no. And then now I'm not such of a person to go to the prom with. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden you're shot down a notch because you've been told no.
Right.
And so you're thinking, I've got to go to someone that has ties to the program and that this is a dream destination for them. That someone that this is the dream. This is where they want to spend the rest of their coaching years is coaching, because people thought. I mean, when this thing was handed over to Lincoln Riley, people assumed that was him. Not me. I was like, every year I thought this will be, we're working on towards his last. He's going to wrap things up here pretty soon. I didn't believe it was going to happen when it did like that, but I never thought he was a lifer. But people did. I think Bob Stoops did what he did because he thought he was a lifer, and so it was the safest, best pick they could make at that time. And now you're just talking about a few weeks later too. They're trying to keep. First of all, they're trying to keep players here. They're trying to keep everybody from transferring out. So they had to hire someone quickly. Then you're trying to keep guys. You're trying to keep your roster just, the roster's in shambles. Players' morale is completely low. You're trying to do something really, really quickly. I feel like that's how this all happened. Just, let's do something quick and let's hope for the best. That's why I really don't think in reality that anybody else was ever really a candidate, because I'm sure some names got shot around, but it was like, who's going to go to the prom with us? Who's going to go to the prom with this the first time we ask, and they're going to say yes. And that ended up being Venables.
Yeah, it makes sense because when you think about that whole thing, from his hiring to the Alamo Bowl to bringing him up on stage and putting the visor on him, and there was a lot of juice in that moment, and it's the juice sputtered so quickly that it just causes to question everything. But there's no point in being a dead horse anymore. It is what it is. We are where we are now. And it's going to be really interesting to see where does OU go from here in terms of their future as a team, the future of Venables' tenure, and just the future of his coaching staff in general. I know we're approaching kind of the witching hour of our show, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go into my Lincoln Riley conspiracy theory with our dear friend. So this goes into an article. When I first started writing, this is probably my third article I ever wrote. This is December 2nd, 2021. So this is right after Riley got hired at USC. So I'm going to lay out my conspiracy theory, and feel free to ask questions anytime. And yes. All right. So here are some critical dates to keep in mind. June 10th, 2020, USC ends its disassociation with Reggie Bush thus ending any of the lasting sanctions from the old USC recruiting scandal. Well, USC pays whatever the scandal under Pete Carroll from back in the early 2000s. USC then loses the Pac-12 championship at home to Oregon when they were undefeated. So that I think gave USC the realization maybe Clay Helton isn't the guy, considering that the only reason Oregon was in that game was because Washington couldn't field a team because of COVID. So then later on that year, as we wrap up, Oklahoma finally gets their first bowl win in Lincoln Riley when they dog walk Florida in the Cotton Bowl, and everyone was high in Oklahoma, and there was Spencer Rattler was taking over, and blah da da da, and some unknown kid by the name of Caleb Williams was coming in from Washington D.C. Was supposed to be this really good quarterback. Boogly boogly boo. Let's fast forward 7 months, or 6 months. This is going to be July 30th, 2021. That's when Texas and Oklahoma announced their plans to move to the SEC. Then we fast forward to 9/11, 2021. That's when USC loses to Stanford. That same day, Oklahoma played Western Carolina at home. They're the number 4 team in the nation, and they won 76-0. Now, within that week is where I think that USC finalized their deal with Lincoln Riley for him to go, because that week they played Nebraska, Oklahoma, and again that we expected them to just smoke the Cornhuskers, and they only won 23-16. And again, that was it was very close for a long time. Offensively, they looked horrible, and it took a one-handed interception in order to seal that game for Nebraska. I think that's the week that USC and Lincoln Riley kind of finalized their deal, because if we remember, there was Oklahoma staffers that eventually leave for USC that was recruiting in Oklahoma shirts on USC's behalf. So I think that was kind of when everything was kind of going down. Helton was already gone. They played poorly, and then if you look at the results after that, it was poor performance after poor performance. They played West Virginia in a team that wasn't good at all, and they only won 16-13. I believe they didn't lead the entire game until the final game-winning field goal. Everyone was chanting for Caleb Williams to come in. Spencer Rattler looked discouraged. It was really, really bad. They played at Kansas State. They actually won 37-31, but another really close game. Then we get into the Red River, where Texas was up, I think, 28-7 at one point before Riley pulled Rattler, putting Caleb Williams. You guys had that phenomenal comeback. And then you guys won all the way up until you guys played at number 13 Baylor. It was big new kickoff. You guys came out sluggish. Williams could never get into rhythm, and then David Round and then they took care of business. And then you guys beat Iowa State, and then for some reason you guys were 11-1, 10-1 at that point. I forget the record, but
10-1.
You guys were right. Yeah, you guys were number 13th in the nation. You guys played at Oklahoma State. Had you won that game, you would have put yourselves firmly back into the college football playoff conversation. There was defensive pass interference in the end zone. I want to start by saying that. But at the same time, Oklahoma did not look outside money on the game on the Sooners. But Oklahoma State did not win that game as much as Oklahoma lost it for a variety of reasons. And obviously after that, we all saw what happened. I think that the entire time Riley was set to go from September 18th to USC. I think that's why he so heavily said he's not going to LSU. I think that's why we didn't hear any rumors about the USC job during that time, which is one of the most high-profile jobs in all of America, and everything like that. So that's my conspiracy theory, is that between the weekend of the Western Carolina and Nebraska game, that's when Riley and USC is finalizing the deal for him to become their head coach out in Southern California. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm keep shaking my head yes, because we're pretty much on the same page, except you're saying Western Carolina was the game where, the 76-0. I want to say they had already begun to start talking before then. And again, the week before we had Tulane, and that was a game, we're supposed to go on the road to play Tulane. Hurricane happens. They come to Oklahoma. We paint the field their colors, and our band plays their songs to make it like a home game for them. And we're exchanging, Oklahoma is exchanging punches with Tulane. Now, no disrespect to Tulane, but in 2021, that's not supposed to happen. Not with that football team. From Tulane, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kansas State, every week there's a group of us going, there's something going on. And of course, the LSU rumors were the only thing kind of being shot around. Once the rumor started, and I feel like the reason why that's the rumor and USC isn't, I think that's because I think Lincoln Riley's agent was involved. No one stirs up a good rumor for someone like an agent does.
Hmm.
Get everybody, looking at the right hand, and no one will be seeing what the left hand's doing. And so somewhere along these lines, listen, you can't tell me that the discussion isn't already well in place if decisions haven't already been made. The only thing, Brock, I often wonder about sometimes is how does Lincoln Riley handle that if Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State? Because you're right, they get in college football playoff.
Yeah.
So
They do because they would have to play Oklahoma State in that scenario again in the Big Ten 12 championship game, which means they don't have to replay Baylor, the one team that clearly had their number.
right,
You know,
yeah,
and then let's think about that scenario. So the four teams in the playoff that year. So that was was that the COVID year? Yeah. Wait, was it the 20? That was 21. All right. So it was Alabama, Georgia.
Yep. Also,
Wait, was it Notre? Was it Notre? No.
No, it wasn't Notre Dame. It was Ohio. Was it Ohio State?
was Cincinnati in that year?
I think so. Yeah.
Right, Cincinnati.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, there we go.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't think they would have had a problem jumping Cincinnati, considering that Cincinnati needed like a lot of luck in order. I still think Oklahoma State would have jumped Cincinnati if they pulled it out against Baylor, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so they would have. Yes, the playoff that year was Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Cincinnati. I think it's pretty safe to say that despite everything we've seen, OU would have jumped Cincy had they beat Oklahoma State twice. Because that's two top 25 wins on top of each other against the same team. Yeah, and then how do you go about it? Or you lose and it's time to go.
Oklahoma fans are most of them are pretty sure that Lincoln Riley blew the Oklahoma State game to keep that from happening. I know, Bill, that's the real thing where people have discussed that Lincoln Riley threw the OSU game so that wouldn't happen. I was like, well, it was an awful close competitive game for him to blow it on purpose. I'm thinking because Brock, I think he's already accepted the job at this point. I think he's already accepted the job at USC. So I've always thought if OU wins this game, he still announces, but maybe after the Big 12 championship game, so that he can go ahead and begin his recruiting at USC. I think you would have seen one of the most, and I kind of wish it would have happened just for the pure entertainment it would have brought. This guy's on the way to a college football playoff, and he quits his team. I mean, it couldn't have been better written. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. But going back to the reality for a minute, Brock, I'm right with you. This thing was decided long before the night of Bedlam, the morning of. I'm feeling honestly probably at least by Nebraska that you get Nebraska, West Virginia in there. I think the decision's already been made. I mean, it's and I feel like there's been some remorse on Lincoln Riley's part, the way he's handled that since. I think that's why he keeps bringing up Oklahoma, because I think there's a little bit of guilt there. Not that he made the decision, but from not wanting to talk to the players to just the timing of everything, and I feel like there's a little bit of I wish I would have done it a little differently, but it is what it is. Honestly, I was more upset about the loss. Caleb Williams plays the bowl game. Was hoping he was going to stay because at that point by the bowl game, pretty much everybody was going to leave had left.
Hmm.
And so Caleb Williams like, I'm gonna come back and play the bowl game. And I was like, this guy wants to prove that it's about him, that he doesn't need Lincoln Riley to perform at the next level. And then goes out, plays okay. They beat Oregon, and then he makes the move to USC. Which, listen, Caleb Williams made the right decision. That's hard to
Hmm.
say. He made the
Hmm.
right decision. He went where his future was. NIL. Listen, we don't have Dre's by Beats in Oklahoma. Beats by Dre.
Hmm.
We don't have that kind of NIL money. You know, you might get some John Deere NIL or some. You know, there's no famous rappers in Oklahoma going to throw out a big NIL deal for wearing their headphones. So he made absolutely the right call, but um, I need to find your article now so I can read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brock will definitely send you a link.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. And I'm with you all the way. I think personally, Lincoln Riley never really wanted to leave Oklahoma, but I think he internally. That's why I don't think it was decided by Tulane, but I think after Tulane is when he personally made the decision because that's when they fired Clay Helton. You don't fire Clay Helton that early after 2 games, or when he won one of them. If you don't think that he's we got the guy coming. The problem I think for Riley is that he thought to himself is that from a recruiting standpoint in this new market, or even just in general, Oklahoma has hit its ceiling. They produce good defensive players, but they could never build a strong defense. I think part of that he thought was because it's Oklahoma, and it's not an easy place to recruit compared to a place like Alabama, which makes no sense because what is the buying power of Tuscaloosa versus Norman? But again, not the point. The real issue is that he did blow games on purpose by hiring Alex Grinch and keeping him employed.
Oh,
But it's true. Like I think now Riley is starting to realize that maybe it wasn't just the players. Maybe my defensive coordinator has his head up his hoo ha and has gotten a bunch of opportunities for no reason. Lincoln Riley cut his teeth in that region at Texas Tech in Lubbock, at Norman, Oklahoma. His family was living there, was being raised there, and everything like that. The only two things I felt he felt that Oklahoma cannot provide is the tools to build a championship level defense and the finances to be paid like a top paid coach. 'Cause I believe before he left, James Franklin already signed a $100 million extension. Now Tucker already signed a $100 million extension. Who else there? Wait, here. Uh, and Orgeron had received a huge extension from LSU the year before, which they're still trying to pay off. Dabo Sweeney received like $90 million a couple years before that. So I just think that he felt that financially and from a defensive building standpoint, Oklahoma just couldn't get the job done. But I do think he still had a lot of love in Norman. I think the fact that he left him the way he did, it still eats at him because he doesn't want to be the most hated son of Oklahoma. I just
He doesn't
don't.
want to be Kevin Durant. He wants to leave Kevin Durant in that spot.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. I think that he wanted to make it work there. He just didn't think it could. And unfortunately, in this new college landscape, shadiness is the only way out for a bunch of head coaches.
I'll give you this real quick. Just kind of some things I do know. There was one way that him and the school had got crossways with each other, in that he looked at the staff that Alabama carries, not coaching staff, but
oh yes.
outside of coaching staff,
Right.
and Oklahoma refused to budge when it came to hiring on these extra guys that Lincoln felt like it was, you have to have these, all the extra nutritionists and those folks. You There was, he saw what Alabama was doing. He come back and he said, Joe, this is the things I want us to hire the same amount of staff, had the same, fill in the same positions that what Alabama is doing. And they said, we've just given you this, and this. We don't think that you need to add on with those, which is interesting enough, is they have hired on those spots with Brent Venables. The folks they would not hire for Lincoln Riley, they did hire for Venables. So I think there's part of that. But I'll go with this and about Grinch and Riley. One thing I always noticed with Lincoln Riley as head coach is the amount of scholarships that went towards offense versus that went towards defense.
Hmm.
he would sign enough wide receivers, running backs that he could miss on some, and there would still be offensive linemen, wide receivers, and running backs were the bulk of the offers and were the bulk. And the defensive side of the ball was where you have this amount of guys you can sign, but when you do sign these guys, you better hit on all of them. You can't have, if this guy's going to be a 4-star, he better play. Like you can't miss. And
Right.
I think there wasn't a real named defensive coordinator who is known for defense that would be acceptable of that light Alex Grinch is. That I'm going to come in and I'm not going to get as many resources. Um, Read this today. Eric Bailey in Tulsa World. There's the 2024 class so far for Oklahoma is ranked 5th in recruiting, mostly defensive guys, like I mentioned earlier. Danny Okoye, 4-star edge rusher, number 1 player in Oklahoma, they've been doing a diary of him through the process. When he began to get recruited by Oklahoma, it was under Lincoln Riley's team. He said today, he said, when I visited Oklahoma, I never saw Lincoln Riley once. Not once did he show up to talk to me as a 4-star future possible defensive edge rusher. Never saw him. That tells me a lot. That he didn't even bother to, you got a 4-star, 5-star, anything walking into your building, and you want them, you are seen as a head coach. And he said, and the energy by 2020, he said I was headed to Texas because the energy at OU was so low. And he said I felt a little insulted that a head coach wouldn't even come out to say hello to me. And then you fast forward that to now, he said, when I show up, he said the first person there to meet me is Brent Venables. Well, that's his bread and butter. That's how he feels they're going to win. So he's there meeting him, and he said the energy. One thing about Venables, one way or the other, one thing he doesn't like is energy.
Yeah.
It's like if you were to pour Red Bulls and cocaine down someone's throat for like a full hour, like that's Venables. The amount of energy he has.
Yes.
And he said, this guy's like bouncing off the walls, but it's like he's treating me like he wanted me. And he said, everybody's treating me that way, but he said there was something anyway about the way Venables did it. But just going back to Lincoln Riley, not even bothering to say, hello, I'm Lincoln Riley. We really want you here. And I really think that's why Alex Grinch is tagged along with Lincoln Riley. And I also think it's also why he didn't get fired. Because listen, he should have been canned probably already for the debacle last season. I don't know that. I think for Lincoln Riley's perspective, he says, who am I going to get that will be accepting of a second tier position coaching my defense when they're not going to get the resources?
Got it.
Yeah, you make that's a great point. And that kind of goes back to why I don't understand why OU hasn't been up to standard right now. Because you look at what you said about Brett Venables, it's true. He literally helped all the freshman players moved in. That's what he does. You look at the relationships he built at Clemson, especially with that Skorsky kid, and before that, Ben Boulware. 2 linebackers that clearly weren't going to the NFL, but played above their potential in college and were leaders and captains of that defense. Brett Venables, throughout his time as coach, has been all about player progression and building up players. And it's shown in the results. I mean, how many first-round defenders has he sent to the NFL from Clemson? How many first-round defenders did he send to the NFL from Oklahoma? But it's just that's the part that's so perplexing to me of like why has the on-field results not matched the off-field commitment? And I don't know. It just goes back to a lot of major concerns because logic would say Oklahoma's about to be back to where they used to be. Results say you're out of your mind if you think that.
Well,
what's going on?
As we wind up, I want to talk a little about the future. So you just talked
Yes.
about that 2024 class, and you mentioned obviously, Okoye by name, David Stone by name, also Taylor Tatum's part of that class. Devon Mitchell's part of that class. Zion Kearney's part of that class. Nigel Smith the third. Nigel Smith the third's part of that class. Jaden Hardy, uh, Ivan Carrerion, Zion Riggins, Wyatt Gilmore, James Nesta, Eugene Brooks, Jaden Jackson, Xavier Robinson, KJ Daniels, Michael Hawkins, Eli Bowen, Isaiah Autry, Dozie Ezekama, Andy Bass, Michael Patterson, Dave McDonald, Josh Iososo, and Brayden Zurbrook. So we know about some of these players already. Give us at least one or two players that you think are going to make an impact that maybe aren't the biggest names in that class, but you think have a chance to do something at OU.
So just going off of the high school in the town I live in, played Carl Albert from Midwest City for a state championship, and so I got an up close look at Xavier Robinson, who was a tailback there at Midwest City or for Carl Albert, 6'2", 220-pound tailback. I think Iowa State. There's some others, and Q and then come back. Bill, like I told you the other day, the kid that mowed my grass is now on the OU football team.
Right.
He's a safety. He played tailback in high school. Played safety also. OU brought him on as safety. Lincoln Riley did not recruit locally at all. Some of these kids had no conversation with OU until Brent Venables came along. So one of the things that's going to be important for him staying is he actually hits on these local kids he's getting on. Anyway, Xavier Robinson, 6'2", 220-pound tailback, good speed, good foot balance. I feel like he's a little bit more, played a higher level of high school football than Marcus Major did. I think this kid has the opportunity to be one of those, he kind of resembles a little bit going back to that 08 team, Brock or Bill, Chris Brown.
Oh, yeah.
That type of runner. There's nothing you're going to say like, oh my goodness, but he's just going to make positive plays for you. And I think, having a 6'2", 220-pound running back to come in and balance what these other guys are doing, I think he has potential. And the other guy, and this will be there's Peyton Bowen, who's a freshman on this year's team, his little brother Eli. Peyton is going to be a special player. He's pushing for playing time already. He's the kid that there was a mix. He originally committed to Oregon, never sent in his letter, committed to, signed on with OU not too long later. But Eli Bowen, another kid out of Guyer Denton, 5'9", good athlete. But Bill, here's a name, Mike Hawkins. Remember Mike Hawkins?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mike Hawkins was a corner on the OU team back in the early 2000s. This is how good an athlete Michael Hawkins was. He played about 2 games at OU. Him and Mike Stoops got into a fight. He was removed from the team. He went and played arena football for a couple of years, lived in a car, and was such a good athlete, he ended up being drafted by the Packers. Like, guy that sit out of football for basically a couple of years, except for a little bit of arena time, was a good enough athlete to make it to the NFL and play a few seasons. His son is a quarterback they signed out of McKinney, Texas, Michael Hawkins Jr. He's going to be one of those guys, I think, that that you're going to be hearing things about. He was highly recruited. He's only a 3-star, but I think he's one of those guys that, if Jackson Arnold's everything they say he is, he's not going to stick around long. Like he'll be a 3. People are like, why don't they redshirt him? Because it will be a wasted year. He's that type of talent, supposedly. So far, what I've seen from him this year, he is that type of talent, but it's only a small selection window. But Michael Hawkins is one of those guys that, 6'2", 195 pounds, quarterback, can move, can run, can get out. And, I'm not going to say he's Sanders, but he's Sanders-ish.
Got it. I got you.
He's it's not that he's going to be out there running for yards, but he's got enough mobility. One of the things that have amazed me about Sanders so far, watching him in Colorado, is just how good he is out of the pocket. Like when he gets out of the pocket, like he's just absolutely incredible. And I feel like Michael Hawkins is going to be one of those kind of quarterbacks that's kind of in that same vein.
Excellent. Well, before you go, tell people where they can. Well, I say find your work. Find your tweets. Find whatever it is you're up to. And then I'm slowly going to try to reel you back into writing on a regular basis. But that's later when the seduction part begins. But before that, yeah, that's later. But before, tell people where they can find whatever it is you're up to, and like I said, where they can follow you on social media.
So Instagram, it's going to be the same. It's all going to be at NJ Lake, X/Twitter, whatever it's called now these days. Right now, I'm giving our state education guy harassment on X, and not a lot of sports, but uh, I'll as we kind of get more into the season, and let me tell you, it's kind of some of the things that I have to say. I just don't want to have to deal with the repercussions when it comes to Oklahoma football right now. So I have been laying a little bit low, but I'm healthy now. Um, I take my medicine every day.
Woo!
Um, you know, um, Brock, I died two years ago, and so for about 7 minutes, and so
Oh,
health was bad. Things were not good for me. Life is back. I'm a software engineer now. I'm back. Uh, you know, kind of back on my feet, and I'm geared back towards this and ready for it.
Yeah. So Brock, the next time like somebody steals your lunch out of the break room, or somebody dents your bumper with a cart, remind yourself of Nolan's story, and then maybe things won't seem so bad.
absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, if you can overcome that, whatever obstacles we have in our lives seem minuscule to that. But don't take my lunch. That's the one nice thing I have in the day. So that just for future anyone that sees Brock on a written on some Tupperware, don't touch it. That's all I got. No, we're very happy that you came on the show. We're very happy you're still with us. Very happy we finally got something that's knowledgeable about Oklahoma, because I love talking Sooners, because the fan base, whether right or wrong or highly delusional, they're so passionate about the Sooners. That's one of the great things about college football. And this is why the game at this level is just so fantastic. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
I wish you and the Sooners the best. You guys continue on this season. Looking forward to another great Red River rivalry, not showdown, rivalry.
Hmm.
Got to get that on my chest. I don't want. I'm tired of the AT&T branding. It's not showdown. It's Red River rivalry. All right,
Yeah,
and just looking forward to talking more Sooners. I just followed you on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'll send you that article. Share with your friends so they can either call me delusional or say I'm spot on. Either way, love talking ball. Thank you for coming on.
It
you
it
bet.
has
Thank
been
you.
an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. I will be bringing Mr. Lake back on at least once more, maybe more, depending on
Have
what
to.
happens to Oklahoma season. We'll obviously have to bring you back. Well, you let us know your schedule, either before or after that Texas game, depending on how your health and your mood and how the game turns out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess is how that.
maybe Jeff Levy might want to hide his father-in-law in the press box next time, instead of taking a family photo on the field with one of the most hated men in all of college football.
Yeah, well, there's more than enough time for you to attack various members of the Bryles and associate Bryles family members, but we really need to finish the recording of the show. So, once again, on behalf of Team NBS Media, my very loquacious co-host, Brock, the babyface assassin Vieira, and one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, right there, Mr. Nolen J. Lake, who I'm slowly but surely trying to bring back into doing this more often. But yes, thank you once again. We will do this again in 1 week. We may or may not have a guest, but we're bringing back the X's and O's segment where Brock will choose to be either offensive or defensive coordinator of some team. And whatever team they're facing, I'll be either the offensive or defensive coordinator, and we will put together a game plan and talk about it on the show. So that's on the next Team MBS presented College Football Forecast. Hey, everybody, be kind, right? This man right here was dead for 7 minutes. Be nice. Doesn't cost anything. See you all later.